We are live. Okay.
Hello, I'm Michelle Teheux. I write Untrickled, and with me today and every Thursday just about is
I'm Allison Tate, and I write Inheriting Inequality. I'm just trying to get a pillow there. Um, so welcome. We're happy to have people here, and we're talking about prices. We're talking about inflation. We're talking about people feeling like they don't have enough money. Um, you uh, you were thinking about this, Michelle. What were your thoughts, and what made you want to talk about this?
um this. My idea was spurred by a New York Times story about they didn't use the term oilflation. That's my own brilliant word coinage, but it seemed to imply, and it makes sense that this is not going to go well, which is surprising because historically, every time we've gotten
We said of
involved
those things, right? Like, no,
every time we've gotten in a war in the Middle East before, it's gone
going
splendidly.
so
It
well.
hasn't
Yeah,
been hard to get out of at all and hasn't screwed up anything. Uh, I'm just as shocked as everybody else that this war is not going well. Who would have
right.
thought, right?
I mean, chalk that up under things that are very surprising.
Very, very surprising. So, yeah, so the question is everybody is noticing that gas is much more expensive, and you see that, but you may or may not be thinking about the fact that every delivery truck, every train, every ship going through the Strait of Hormuz, and everything, unless you are making something out of your own yard, it's got to come somewhere, and that's going to imply some oil is being used to ship it to you. Not only to mention that oil is often used in the manufacturing. So if you order a doodad from Amazon, not only the manufacturer of that plastic doodad, but shipping it and distributing it and delivering it to your door, that's all going to take oil, and
Yep.
some of that oil is coming from the Middle East. It's a little bit hard to understand that sometimes because we are a net exporter of oil. You would think that it wouldn't affect us, but if you have purchased gas at all in the past few months, you have noticed that it does. And if you're like me, you just, when you need gas, you pay for it, you grit your teeth, you just do it because you have to have gas. If you're like my husband, you will drive yourself absolutely insane, absolutely insane, worrying about 1 cent difference between this particular gas station and another one. But
So you spend
whether
more
you do it,
driving to the other gas station to get the gas at the lower price.
he can tell you, well, he'll pass a fair number of gas stations
Yeah.
each day. And of course, you've got a certain amount of leeway as to when you buy gas. And he will be able to tell you station A is this much, station B is this much. It drives him absolutely, he lets it bother him. But, um, for some people who are one rung below me on the ladder, it's a matter of can you afford to get to work or not? And you think, what's another 5 cents? Well, that might mean like, will you have enough money to get to work on Friday before you get paid again, or will you not? So, it's a serious problem. It's annoying to all of us, but it's
I
budget
mean, that's the
threatening.
thing, though. It's not annoying to all of us, right? So I guess that was one of the things that I wanted to mention is that inflation um, hits different people differently, right? And for some people, inflation is not a bad thing at all. For some people, like you say, it's a matter of getting to work and it's a matter of paying more for your eggs and for, all of the things that the
Every
consumer
single
price
you
index
buy.
is. For some people, it's actually an opportunity, right? For some people, inflation is not a bad thing at all. So once again, there's a range of effect across the wealth and income spectrums as to who really suffers, who bears the burdens, the disproportionate harms of, this, price increases and inflation.
And that's true. It's true no matter what causes the inflation spike. Right after the pandemic, we saw it where things got more expensive, and everybody's like, "Oh no, it's more expensive,"
Mm,
and stores were like, this is an opportunity to increase our prices above and beyond what are true. And they did have increased prices, they really did,
yeah.
but they increased their prices far beyond what they needed to do to capture the increased costs. And they all had field days in the quarters after that because they were like, they expect it to be expensive because of the pandemic. So,
Mhm.
yeah, that's gone up this much because of the pandemic, but we can get away with raising it this much and they'll blame the pandemic. And,
Right.
you know,
Because people don't actually know how much is the tariff or how much is the pandemic or how much is oil. They just see the increased price and they don't know what percentage of that is profit and what percentage of that is not.
if there is no obvious reason, like a pandemic, like a tariff, like a war in the Middle East, if there's no obvious reason for a price increase, and all of a sudden a loaf of bread goes up $1, you're going to be complaining like I'm not paying this. What's going on at this grocery store? But if there's a plausible reason for it, then you're like, this is just how much stuff costs now, and I guess I
Yeah,
just have to
that's
pay
the
it.
thing. You just see the price and then you get used to it over time, right? So
Yeah.
it's like an Overton window for prices, right? And you get used to it,
Oh
and then
yeah.
when you see it is in the future, you think, oh, that's what it costs, so that's fine.
Why don't
Um,
you? Okay, the Overton window. Does everybody know what this is? Because I love that term. Basically, it's like what's not acceptable, what is acceptable, and like a lot of things that are not acceptable you think could never happen. And I'll use as a quick non-economic example Roe versus Wade. Um,
just a quick example
just
of,
a quick
of
example.
reproductive justice. Yes.
Everybody thought that that the window of people who thought that was acceptable was basically not very many. But now it's like people who hadn't given it a thought and just took it for granted are now like, yeah, it's normal. That's normal for some people to have to travel, a whole day in order to access that. I mean, that's just normal now.
Yeah, it's
It,
moving any type of radical politics into a more central position by talking about it more, right? The fact of talking about it, like people have been mentioning this with like repeat, like the 19th Amendment, right? The fact that you talk about it more and people are like, oh, it's crazy, but they're still talking about it and it's still centered and it's still focused. So anyway, um, but the same thing, right? You acclimatize people to something and they get used to it. And all of a sudden you're like, yes, eggs do cost 10.99 for a dozen, or gas does cost $5 a gallon.
Ices in Motion says in her community, uh, 40 cents per gallon, which does make a difference. That
That's a big
obviously,
difference. Yeah. That's a big difference. But I also wanted to point out that, so there's the people, there are the corporate entities that are making a lot of profit. And, again, we don't know exactly how much because of the way that pricing works. But also people, right? People who hold real estate, people who hold equities, people who have money in trust structures. These are all people who don't necessarily mind inflation, right? Because it's raising the value of what they own and actually like that's getting cheaper for them in real terms. So, some people, especially people who are sort of like dependent on wages, right? Those are the people who are hit the hardest. And obviously that's people, right, who working class people. It's also disproportionately women, right, who have
oh, yeah.
cash and wages, and they're more likely to be sort of negatively affected by inflation, and they're not usually they're less often the primary asset holders or the wealth holders in any given situation.
Yeah, so there's obviously, like you say, there's winners and losers, and you think, well, inflation is bad, but you're pointing out that not for everybody.
Not for
And it's
everybody.
a little
Yeah.
bit like another example from fairly recent history was the housing bubble in
Mhm.
around 2008, which I was a part of because I was trying to sell a house in 2008, not because it was being foreclosed upon, but just because we needed to move to a bigger house that better met our needs. And I ended up not selling that house at all ever. I still own it, but I remember the real estate agent calling me one night and saying, "Well, I've gotten an offer, but I'm kind of afraid to tell you what it is because, he just assumed that the person who called the agent just assumed it had been foreclosed upon and he could snap it up for very little money." And like, could he not find any widows and orphans to go take advantage of? And
Right.
so a lot of people really, if they had money in hand and had money to invest in housing, I imagine a lot of people got into or expanded their landlord game at that point because they were able to snap up houses that were being
Yeah, absolutely.
and those people today are making bank because they bought a house. Really, they bought probably numerous houses and apartments really cheap,
Mhm.
and they're renting them out for ungodly profits. And so when I think, oh God, 2008 was terrible, the housing crisis was terrible, there's some people out there thinking, I've never been so lucky in my life.
Right.
And
Yeah. I mean,
there's,
it had differential impacts on people, and, it was, incredibly negative effects on, people who are already economically vulnerable, right, on Black
Yeah.
communities, on white communities. What's there's a saying is when Wall Street gets a cold, Black America gets pneumonia, I think it is,
Oh, that's
right?
it.
Like
Yeah.
the
So do
amplified
single
effects.
moms, and so do working class people of any race, basically the have-nots, or the people who are more likely to be a have-not, I should
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, so similar thing in terms of, like, just a very big difference in who inflation is going to, what inflation is gonna do to different people. So certainly, right, there's some people who are gonna be, hit with higher prices and are gonna be having a harder time getting to work, and then there's some people whose wealth is gonna go up. The thing that they care about is that the interest rate doesn't go up correspondingly, right? That's the trick right now, and you can see it playing out in sort of like real time debates about whether or not interest rates should be increased.
So you may have heard a quote from Trump saying that he was defending the fact that he has made more money during this presidency than he made in his entire whole life as an investor and a real estate guy.
Mhm.
Um, in part, that's because everything he touches ended in bankruptcy. But yeah, now he's making money hand over fist. And when someone pointed that out, he said, "Oh, but everybody's making money. It's because the stock market's doing great."
Right.
And just a reminder that the stock market is something that a small percentage of Americans have money in the stock market. Roughly half have little to none. I don't remember that exact number. Do you happen to have
Yeah,
that?
it depends, like, actually owning stock or most people's participation in the stock market is through, like, their 401k
401 or
or
something
some
like
type of retirement fund or something
that.
like that, and that's a higher percentage. The percentage of people who actually, like, on their own stock is or equities is very, very small.
But even if you look at 401 and say, "Oh, not everybody has a 401,
Right. Yep.
many, many more people than you think do not have anything at all in the stock market through any method at all. I wanna say it's roughly half that they don't work at the type of job that gives you a 401, or even if it's offered, they don't fund it.
Right.
Uh, I remember being gobsmacked when I worked at a newspaper, which was a place where none of us were getting rich at that newspaper. We were working hard for low pay, and, I went to the business office to ask a question about my benefits, and the guy happened to mention that I was one of only just a handful of people in the whole place that actually put any money into the 401, and I was feeling bad because I was putting in far less than what you're supposed to.
Yep.
But a lot of coworkers, they could not, and it wasn't that they were blowing out other things, it's that
Of course.
people who are making, like, under $20,000 a year
Mm.
are not gonna put $20,000 a year into
Right.
a 401, so even people who might have it technically available doesn't mean that they're able to use it,
Right.
and,
And this is this
that's a lot of Americans.
and it's something that inflation will increase. We've talked about retirement insecurity and social insecurity, right? And the fact that people are at more than any other time in the past, well, in the recent past, unprepared for retirement. Uh, because people are not doing these and inflation is gonna make it worse. Like, if you were gonna put away some money in or if you were gonna add to your 401k or you were gonna start an IRA with inflation, now you're less likely to do that. Um, so again, it has all kinds of, downstream effects. It does trickle down, your favorite. There are there are effects, right, that go out. I don't know if it's a downward, but there are effects that go out, and so again, like less savings, less retirement savings, all of those things are affected.
And if you even for people who are doing a little bit better, they're in the middle class, not the upper middle class, but just the classic middle class, and maybe they were planning to take a road trip this summer across the country. Some people might be rethinking that, especially if they have not some little, highly efficient tiny car, but if they had a van, if they had, even a camper, especially if they had a camper or some sort of a motor home or something, oh my god. Um, I think a lot of people, even the ones who are, like, relatively comfortable,
Mm.
are gonna be rethinking that. I read someone saying they had one of the big, recreational vehicles, and the trip that they kind of had been thinking about, the guy penciled out that it might cost them $10,000 in gas because those vehicles get such terrible gas mileage, obviously,
Right.
and
So you're
you have
saying Clarence
every
Clarence Thomas is gonna be alone on the road in his, whatever big type of camper thing he has that he parks in the Walmart parking lots?
Oh my god. I can't even imagine. My husband and I we were joking, but we joked when we were because we just replaced a car, by the way. And so, we drool over the campers and, recreational vehicles of all kinds. Like, we've got a neighbor that's got one that, they gave us a tour. We're like, "Oh, this would be fantastic." And, we were tempted at one point, like, to get, like, a really old one,
Uh,
and that dream is like, we might as well dream of, like, buying property on Fifth Avenue or something. Like, that's not gonna happen. It seemed like it might be something that can happen eventually if we were careful and prioritize it, but, like, that is not gonna happen whatsoever at any time we can foresee in our lifetimes. Not just the cost of buying it, but just driving it around the block would
yeah.
bankrupt it.
So when you were out, you just bought a new car, and so did inflation, did sort of like the, like, economic situation, how did that impact your car purchasing decision?
Oh, I wanted, obviously, to get the most dirt cheap little car. I didn't wanna get beat or that's gonna nickel and dime me, but I just
Uh-huh,
wanted to get a really, really basic car.
okay,
And that did not happen. I mean, we didn't go too crazy. We bought a 4-year-old car with only 30,000 miles on it. So it's got a little bit of powertrain warranty on it. It's in absolutely mint shape.
yeah. I mean,
Um,
it's my theory that you should absolutely never buy a new car, you should buy a car with, like, 5,000 miles on it because the depreciation
yeah.
in between, like, mile 0 and mile 10 is crazy.
This car, my husband estimates because it had a lot of options on it, which you don't get your money back for when you sell it. And he estimated that the car had depreciated, I can't remember, like close to 15,000. So it's got 30,000 miles on it, but
Mm.
it has depreciated greatly. It is not the cheapest car you could possibly get. It is an absolutely cute as a button little red Mini Cooper. I admit it's cute.
Oh, cute.
Um, this is what he wanted. We had one previously,
Uh-huh,
and he really, really, really wanted it. And he is less of a he can be cheap in some ways, but he's less cheap when it comes to
yeah.
cars because
BMW engine.
yes, he has done all of his due diligence, and he says, as far as, like, all the engines, this is the best engine, it should not cause any trouble. We looked at many other cars, and he had things to say about this car historically at this particular mileage mark tends to have this problem, blah, blah, blah. He thinks that we bought, like, the best car you could possibly buy.
Right.
He's delirious about it. Okay, um,
Right.
we
And so
probably spent
did you think about, like, gas mileage? Like, did you think about, like, how far you have to drive?
it does. It's a little car, it has good gas
Good.
mileage. We're disappointed we could not get a manual transmission, they're almost impossible to find.
Yeah,
So
it's true, in the States, they were super hard. It's interesting, I took my car someplace or this it was not my car, it was a while ago, my mom's car, she had a manual, people don't know how to park them anymore either. So, like, if you take it to valet or, like, a parking, thing, like, they don't know how to drive the car and they can't park it for you.
yeah, so
So
this is
crazy.
the first automatic transmission I've had in I don't even know
Yep,
how long. Every car I've had
yep,
has been a shift until because you do get slightly better gas mileage, that was part of the reason that was my reason. I begin to suspect my husband's reasoning was more that he thinks they're fun to drive, whereas
yeah.
I was about the dollars. He tried
Raisins in Motion says, "I owned a Mini Cooper and loved it." So you have affirmation. Great on gas. There you go. And
yeah,
this is
it is
another thing to
good.
point out with inflation, right? It's like you chose. I mean, you bought a car now, you needed one, but, the people, again, who are hit the hardest are the people who can't put off are the things who are people purchasing the things you can't put off, right? Like,
Yeah,
oftentimes you can put off a car or you can put off maybe some type of home repair, although I mean, putting off air conditioning right now might not be a possibility, but it's the things who are buying, groceries, people who are paying things like childcare costs. So again, it often comes down to putting a heavier burden on women, but it's also just people paying for those like daily household items that they can't delay purchasing for.
and honestly, we had been delaying a car purchase. We got into what I consider to be the danger zone, and, you know, I didn't wanna get to the part where we had to choose between paying $1,500 for a repair
Hmm.
on a car that is probably not even worth that, our old car, and, we really by all it would have made a lot more sense to replace it at least a year ago, but first it was pandemic and, no one wanted to buy a car then, and then it was tariffs and this, it was that. There was always a good reason not to buy a car now, but I realized, like, we are really making a big risk because that the old car was it was doing all sorts of things. It was like, "Just so you know, we're gonna die very soon," and we're like, "Please, please last longer. It's not a good time to buy a car." And we
Right.
finally just had to do it. We really it would have not been frugal to wait longer, although I still maintain we should have gotten a 2-year-old Camry or something like that.
Did you get a trade-in value for the car?
We bought it from a private owner,
Okay,
so, we're gonna have to sell the other one, which is gonna be another whole
whole thing.
role that I'm
Yeah,
not looking forward to, but
right.
somebody out there that really wants an old Mini Cooper that's on its last legs, but just wants one as a second car or something, or who enjoys tinkering with an old car, somebody out there should like it. It is a stick shift, which people tend to like when it comes to that kind of car, but
Yeah,
this thing literally held together by wire coat hangers, I'm not kidding.
well, there you go. But it's working, so there you go. Um,
Just yeah.
yeah, so inflation, people might be putting off things. It's nice that you bought the car, like, were able to before the other one broke down, right, bought the car. The other thing that people might be pushed into doing with inflation and increased cost of things is, lending, right? Going and getting a loan and small loans, and this is again where I always come back to something I, slash love hate to talk about, which is payday lending, because this is another situation where people are driven to these kind of alternate financial services and, get themselves into no by no fault of their own, right, through economic circumstances, get themselves into, really terrible situations, right, with lending because they create these cycles of lending that are extractive and, predatory.
I see the comment from Pisces in Motion. I had to replace my double ovens, not because it was too
Uh,
old, but the company stopped manufacturing the part that failed, and it was only 7 years old. Companies keep changing models and are impossible to do cheaper repairs. My refrigerator, I when I bought it, my previous one was only 6, 7 years old, and the cost of fixing it was gonna cost more than getting a new refrigerator. And so, obviously, I bought a new refrigerator, but what a waste. All you think about all the raw materials that go into a refrigerator or ovens or
yeah,
something like that, and because of, some little part that's cheaply made that you cannot buy cheaply, you end up replacing it, and the old one hopefully the components are recycled, but that's my grandma had this old, refrigerator for the entire almost my entire childhood. My grandma had the same old refrigerator,
yeah,
and it worked just as fine the day she moved out of that house as it did when I was a small child.
yeah. Well, things weren't built, you didn't have appliances that were built for or technology that was built for obsolescence the way it is now, right? You had things
Yeah,
that
yeah,
lasted a very long time. Yeah. Which again, like the build for obsolescence is a meaningful obstacle to people when they need to be buying things and like again, like things like a refrigerator or an air conditioner or things like that, which are incredibly necessary right now, right in our little heat
yeah.
dome.
Oh
Yeah.
god. I have not always had air conditioning. I have it now, and I'm grateful for it, but, the summer of okay, this is gonna sound like an old lady talking, but there's a reason for that. Um, the summer I graduated from college, we did not have air conditioning in this half a house that my first husband and I were renting, and that summer, it got up to, I think, like, definitely 104, or there may have been a couple of days hotter than that, and let me tell you, that is hot. To be in a house without air conditioning was 104 degrees, and, luckily, we were very young and healthy, and it didn't harm us physically, but you think about, like, elderly people, um, or anybody, honestly, who has any sort of a health condition, you can die from heat. And I used to be of the opinion that I lived through it and so can everybody else, but I've wised up. That was an incorrect way of looking at it because not everybody does live through a heat wave.
Right.
And, yeah, if you've got, it's very, very hot, and I'm gonna get into my little $300 seasonal pool after this live because it's really freaking hot. It is like it's in the 90s here where I am in Central Illinois. I'd have to look, but it's 90 something right now, and if I didn't have conditioning and or a pool, it's dangerous at a certain point.
Yeah, so buying something like that again, right? It's not a sort of optional thing. in this type of right, with, like with these types of weather trends, it's not an optional thing, so that's another thing that people have to buy and put money out for. Um, so it there's all kinds of things like that that add up, and again, like, often force people into lending, and often force people into, like, various forms of loans from family members, right? Family lending, things like that.
Or without really important things, and at this
Mhm.
point in time, for most people in most locations, having an air conditioning, um, that really if you feel like you cannot afford to run your air conditioning, that's not good. So even just buying the window unit, you can buy a window
Right.
unit for a relatively decent price and at least have one cool room to sleep in and retreat to during the hottest part of the day. But if you're fearful about running it because you can't afford it, which is true of a lot of, you think about elderly people on a fixed income. Oh my God! And also smoke.
Yeah, it's
You
like wildfire
have,
smoke here and smoke from Canada. One reason people do need ACs, right? Or even just air purifiers when it's really so bad. Um,
yeah, if you've got
Air
some
purifiers.
asthma or emphysema or any number of other conditions, that smoke and this heat really is not good for you.
Yeah.
And yeah, so and again, energy costs directly linked to the cost of oil.
Right. Yeah, so that's one of the things, people seem to talk was one of the things I was thinking about with inflation. People tend to talk about inflation like it's kind of a seasonal thing, right? It comes and goes and it is and it is and it isn't and oh, inflation's risen again, inflation's gone back down again. Um, but I mean, as we started from the very beginning, it's clearly linked to, right, uh, an extensive set of circumstances and factors. And rarely do I mean, I think here in this particular situation, right, with the oil, the straits, and the very basically the geopolitical situation, we can actually name like very specific factors, but very oftentimes we don't name the right factors for these types of for inflation, right?
Well, a lot of people blamed inflation post-pandemic to the leadership in Washington as if they thought Biden had a dial that he could like, "I'm gonna turn this inflation up or down." It's like, it doesn't work that way. In general, political leadership, especially the president, doesn't always have a lot of say over inflation. It's like trying to stop a giant ship. It takes a while to turn a giant ship around. There's momentum, there's a lot of different factors. You can't just declare that inflation is gonna go up or down.
Mhm.
The Fed can to some extent, but they can't just do whatever they want either, obviously. But, there are also times that there is a very, very clear reason for inflation, and one of those times is right now. There's a really obvious, very clear reason why oil has gone up. It isn't a mystery. It isn't something we have to wonder, "What in the heck happened?" It's really, really clear.
Mhm. And one of the things I think people don't talk about this, we have a very because there is right, very clear, there are a lot of clear factors right now. But one of the things that I don't think people talk about particularly often is the relationship between wealth inequality and wealth concentration and inflation. And there is correlation between those factors. And with the ever increasing wealth concentration and wealth inequality we have, I think that we will also be um, persistently seeing inflation because you do see like again, the divergence of what people have and what people are paying.
I think that there's a lot of Americans right now who are completely unaware of how other people are living, and that's true of everybody. I don't care what class you are. A lot of people really live in a bubble, and they just assume that whatever reality they're living in is how most Americans are living, and this is a recurring theme I come back to again and again about people's bubbles. And so if you are comfortable and, it's like, "Well, that kinda sucks that, it costs extra to fill up the minivan, but oh well, I'm still gonna keep living my life." You may not realize that, for some people, this is an absolute crisis
Mhm.
and sure how they're gonna get through it. And likewise, if this is a crisis for you and you're not sure how you're gonna get through it, it's difficult for you to imagine that some people don't even consider this a big deal. It's just a fact that does not affect them. And so the people who are making our policies, they're certainly not aware. There aren't any people making these policies who are sweating gas going up 5
Right.
cents or even 50 cents. It does not affect their reality at all. They probably don't even buy gas.
I mean, you could look at it 2 ways. You could say they're not aware, which is one way. You could also, if you were more cynical, you could say they are aware, but they're actually, like, benefiting from the inflated value of their assets with inflation, right? So it's actually not terrible for them. In fact, it's actually producing some type of profit for them.
We would not be cynical, though. We would never be cynical.
So there's a more charitable and there's a less charitable, but the whole idea that wealth concentration really can influence consumer prices, I think, is something that people are going to need to start talking about, right? And I mean, talking about the fact that when you have a disproportionate share of economic value and economic ownership sort of concentrated in the hands of these top earners, that their purchasing power can really sustain high prices, and it can actually just really have a great influence on the consumer price index. So people think, and this is one of the things that I'd like to talk about, right? People think that what really rich people do has no impact on the rest of the world or the rest of people. And I think people are understanding more and more now that they do, right? I mean, it impacts what people pay for things. It impacts, what billionaires do impacts the climate justice efforts, climate emissions. But here, and what we're talking about, it definitely impacts what people pay for things. So, um, billionaire concerns have, again, ripple effects, right, on on the markets that we deal with
Uh,
every day going to buy eggs.
and the other thing is, I've heard the argument many times that, "Oh, look at the price of TVs, they've gone down. Look at the price of this thing and that thing, they've all gone down. You can get all sorts of technology now so much cheaper," and that's true. My very first computer that I bought in about 1995 or something like that was a secondhand, Macintosh something or other, and we paid $1,500 for it used. That was my first. We thought we had a deal, and, oh gosh, at one point a few years ago, I bought myself a laptop that was like $300 or something, and, I'm now using a nicer computer because I have a fabulous son who decided he knew I'd prefer, an Apple product, and he just went out and bought me a Mac Air. So I have one that cost me nothing. So, um, we've talked a lot about the pros and cons of having kids. Have a kid who
That's
will
a
buy.
good one. I mean, honestly, like, I don't ever wish that I had children, but sometimes, like, I was like, I would like to get gifts. I do like gifts. People like
My
different
son
types
will
of
just
love
be like,
language.
"Oh,"
That's my love language is gifts.
my son
Pisces in Motion says
like,
electricity prices will continue to rise with AI centers, right? Yeah, causing more people to unable to afford AC, right?
yeah.
Also very
Oh,
true. And again, the distributional effects, are distributed in highly unequal ways with
I kind
those
of
effects as well.
I went off on a tangent. I wanna return to what I was saying, which is you can, in fact, buy cheaper electronics. You can get a much better TV for a much cheaper price, for instance, is the classic example. But, what you can't get cheaper is health insurance, and you can't get you there isn't a cheaper way to buy gas. I mean, not
Right,
really.
right.
The price for gas is the price for gas. Rich or poor,
Housing's
you
not cheaper, education's not cheaper, healthcare's not
health
cheaper, right?
healthcare and housing. Housing, you've got some wiggle room, but it's hard. I say this as somebody who does have cheap housing. I realize that my, living in cheap house landia, as I call it, is not an option that is open to everybody. I benefit from it personally, but I'm completely aware that that is, one of the rare forms of privilege I have is that I
Yeah,
happen to be born in
yeah,
central Illinois, where housing is usually much cheaper than it is in
yeah.
most areas.
I
I
I do think even with that, I think I would read a statistic, I think it was for last year, not it was for 2025, not 2026, but I can't imagine that it's changed radically, that there's not one city or county in which you can rent a two-bedroom apartment on minimum wage.
that is true, and, people get around that a number of ways. Like, there are places where 3 generations are living a really dire life in a mobile home. Everybody has a job like fast food or a cashier at a convenience store or something like that, and, maybe grandma's on disability. The She watches the kids while her daughter works at
Right.
McDonald's, and her still lives there, and, works as a cashier at, Casey's convenience store or something like that. Like,
But again, right, like,
people
as we would say, like, not something anyone should need to be able to get around, right? Like, that's something
no. And
We should
the
have more
problem
housing security for people along with, maybe an air conditioner in the housing.
and one of the things we pointed out before, but I think it's an under-recognized problem, is that we no longer track worker productivity with wages. It used to be you would see a chart and like
Mm,
worker productivity went up and worker wages went up and they were closely tracked. And now worker productivity has gone like this and worker wages have gone like this.
yeah.
There's a pretty scientific um, chart that I
You
just
forgot
really
the corporate profit line, which went like that too.
yeah, and you think, well, how did so many people how did we get so many very rich people and a burgeoning lower class? Why is the middle class shrinking? And it is because the wealth created by each worker is by and large not going to the worker.
Mhm.
Only a little extra is going to the worker. It is going to the people at the top of the K, our K-shaped economy. A few people are making a lot of money,
Mhm.
and more people are continuing to not make that much, even as their efforts are creating more and more wealth for the companies that employ them. And that is why you have more poor people.
Yeah.
It's not that people don't want to work, it's not that people aren't working, it's that jobs are not paying what they should pay based on what that job is producing for the owner of the company.
Yeah. Yeah, Pisces in Motion says some states are putting laws in place where only people related can rent a unit. This is one of my, like, favorite topics, and blame Reagan for the wage demise correctly. It's a story, right? It's a story. First of all, like you said, well, where do we locate the start? We locate the start in the 70s and the, development of the sort of neoliberal state and deregulation, which Reagan just sort of, put on steroids. And basically everything being deregulated and marketized. But this whole thing about laws being put in place for only people related can rent a unit, I that is happening in lots of places. I mean, we already have single family zoning, which is bad enough, right? It's like a hugely exclusionary, racist, and terrible type of zoning because it really, it's really
Wow.
policing who can be where. And this is the same thing in rentals. So putting has to be, and they also because they define family on a certain way too in terms of who's related. So I think it's a way
What
of,
that
yeah.
law work exactly? If you wanna fill me in, 'cause I'm not aware of how that works because I
Well,
don't think
I mean, so
uh,
it's kind of like the single family zoning kind of things, where it's like basically if you rent something or, like if you're buying a house, if it's zoned for single family, it can only be people who are related by blood or marriage, and only can only be sometimes like three people or five
oh,
people or
so
things like that.
yeah,
So
a
basically
house.
trying to the idea is that you're trying to prohibit families that are sort of multi generational, but also like people who are living with extended family, and people who are living with chosen family, right? People who are living with different types of family that wouldn't be considered family by law. And that usually, I mean, disproportionately, that has a negative impact on. This is a way to get rid of immigrant families, right, in rental housing. It's been weaponized against all kinds of different, types of communities, Black communities, any non-white communities, again, immigrant communities, LGBTQ2 plus communities, like people who don't, again, fit into that sort of, oh dear, there she went. I got too into my single family zoning rant. Michelle, come back. Anyway, yeah, Pisces in motion. Yes, correct. The laws in place, and there are a lot of good state organizations that are trying to fight against the rental things, but it's most of it is again anti-immigrant, and yeah, that's one of the huge things. So, anybody in the chat, anybody like thoughts on what inflation is doing to their summer plans or not? Anything? Um, like what's going on with inflation? The June report, oh dear. The June report came out and it was inflation was not as bad as people had predicted, right? But there's still talk about the interest rate. I wonder if Michelle's trying to get back. um, so maybe we'll wrap it up here. Um, oh no, there she is. There she is. Michelle, we lost you. Yeah, there she goes. Um, okay, so maybe we'll wrap it up, but thank you everybody for joining us, and, we'll be back, and, I hope that you have air conditioning and you're enjoying all of the things, all of the amenities and all of the goods that you have paid more for because of inflation, and, we'll see you again soon. Okay, bye.